Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone joining us from around the world. Thank you for joining us today for this important event. This is the launch of the global rollout of the WASH Insecurity Analysis initiative. My name is James Brown. I'm the WASH Insecurity Analysis Coordinator, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar. Today's event marks a really significant milestone in this initiative and in our collective efforts to strengthen evidence-based WASH programming. And we have a really engaging agenda ahead of us. We really welcome your active participation. Of course, we've set aside some time for questions at the end of this session, so please do use the Q&A feature to make sure that we see them and that we can pull them out for the panelists. We are recording today's session, and we're going to share the recording afterwards with all attendees and everyone who's signed up. So once again, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. And without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Joanna Domanin, who's the Head of Humanitarian Aid Policies and International Humanitarian Law Unit at DG ECHO, to officially open today's session. Joanna, over to you.
Thank you very much, James, and thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here with you all today. It's impressive to see the high amount of people who have registered for this session. Shows the importance of the issue. First of all, a couple of words on the new commission. We are heading into an exciting direction in the institutional cycle. And you will have seen that we have a new commissioner, Haj Al Habib, who is the European Commissioner for Equality, Preparedness and Crisis Management, and core to her mandate is humanitarian affairs, which certainly will remain a key priority, in particular as we face a lot of complex issues in the world today. A couple of points on water. I think you are all aware, as are we, that access to safe water and sanitation is a basic human right. Unfortunately, at present, 2 billion people, that is a quarter of the global population, uses unsafe drinking water sources. Water is a fundamental part of all aspects of life. It is closely linked to sustainable development in various areas such as food security, public health, policy, poverty reduction, gender equality, and last but certainly not least, climate and the environment. Another challenge that we are seeing today is climate change and its impact in terms of increasing water scarcity, also compounded by the trend towards urbanization. They make it even more challenging to ensure that everyone has access to safe drinking water and sanitation. A couple of words about DG ECHO's and the EU's engagement on this file. The EU is one of the largest humanitarian donors of WASH assistance worldwide. We contribute around 200 million every year. Yet we see that the needs remain high and resources are always limited, which means we have an even higher obligation to make sure that we are making the best use of funds available. Just to put it in perspective, OCHA's Global Humanitarian Overview of 2025 reports that more than 100 million people globally did not receive WASH assistance due to underfunding and attacks on infrastructure. In 2024, only $1.2 billion, or 32%, of the $3.8 billion requested for humanitarian WASH was funded, as reported by the Financial Tracking Service. In the past, DG ECHO has supported the Global WASH Cluster and other humanitarian global clusters until they could be independent. The Global WASH Cluster has played a key role to improve access to basic WASH services. In this forum, through the WASH humanitarian agencies, major donors and other actors can agree, task and resource global humanitarian WASH priorities in direct support of field operations. DG ECHO is currently undergoing an evaluation of its WASH interventions globally over the past 5 years, and we hope to have a number of recommendations from our team of experts by June this year, following which we will have to make an assessment on the need for the upgrade of our policy. A little bit about the session today and the water insecurity analysis. This initiative that will be presented today responds to a number of key challenges. The lack of an analytical tool is affecting all actors in the WASH sector. As resources for this sector are insufficient, we must find a way to influence decision making with more robust data and analysis. To address this issue, the WASH Insecurity Analysis has been developed as a tool that identifies geographic areas and quantifies the populations at risk of WASH insecurity, as well as the populations already experiencing it. It is similar to what we use today in the field of food insecurity with the IPC classification. ECHO has been following the development of this tool since 2019 through extensive consultations, an academic review conducted by Tufts University in 2022, and an iterative validation with WASH actors. This tool aims to be rigorous and responsive to the needs of humanitarian actors. I'm very happy to have been able to allocate a specific envelope under the DG ECHO's Enhanced Response Capacity HIP 2024 to support this initiative. In conclusion, I can only thank you for your interest, and in particular Ms. Hazel DeWet and her team for today's event and for all the support in continuing to develop this tool, which is crucial to ensure more efficient use of resources available in favor of the most vulnerable communities exposed to WASH insecurity. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to the remainder of this morning's session. Thank you, James.
Many thanks, Joanna. And it's now my pleasure to introduce Ms. Hazel DeWet, Deputy Director of the Office of Emergency Programs here at UNICEF, for your opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, James, and good morning and Happy New Year to all of the colleagues. At the outset, I'd like to wish us all a wonderful 2025. And clearly, I think as a collective, as part of the humanitarian ecosystem, we would look forward to having those opportunities that make a significant difference to the people that we respond to. And at the outset, let me first thank Ms. Damon for your absolutely wonderful, inspiring, and insightful remarks, and to express on behalf of myself, my team, and UNICEF for the generous support that DG ECHO has been presented to us, without which we would not be able to do what we would like in order to respond to the needs of the people. This support enables us to continue building on the success of the WASH Insecurity Analysis Initiative and reflects the absolute power of partnerships in driving meaningful, forward, effective, and accountable humanitarian action. Under the shared leadership by the Global WASH Cluster and its partners, today's launch of a 2-year initiative to further refine and roll out the WASH Insecurity Analysis demonstrates our joint commitment to deliver high-quality, evidence-based WASH programming that is equitable, sustainable, and risk-informed. By advancing how we understand and address WASH insecurity, this initiative strengthens our ability to advocate for and deliver essential services to the most vulnerable populations in the most challenging context. As humanitarian needs to grow, the WASH sector faces increasing pressure to adapt and deliver. The escalating complexities of crisis, whether driven by climate change, protracted crises, or economic instability, requires us to act more efficiently, prioritizing resources to interventions that promises the greatest impact. Despite the growing availability of data, the WASH sector continues to struggle with a fragmented analysis. Humanitarian, development, and peace actors often work in silos, developing assessments and strategies that lack alignment. This disconnect makes it harder to identify shared priorities and respond holistically to the interconnected challenges of WASH insecurity. The human right to water and sanitation is universal, yet millions remain without access to even basic services. This is not just a matter of infrastructure or resources, but of understanding the underlying vulnerabilities, whether economic, social, or environmental, that prevent sustainable progress. Bridging the gap between humanitarian development and peace efforts is critical to ensuring that our work not only addresses immediate needs, but also builds resilience for the future. This is a critically important aspect as we go forward. We are seeing that we are living in an extremely polar crisis, and there are increasingly limited resources, and the needs are exponentially increasing. The WASH Insecurity Analysis responds to these challenges by providing a shared framework for understanding WASH insecurity, enabling us to move beyond isolated assessments towards a coordinated, evidence-based approach. By utilizing availability of data on WASH services, hazards, and vulnerability, the WASH Insecurity Analysis facilitates joint analysis across humanitarian and development actors and provides a coherent understanding of needs and risks. The framework also aligns with UNICEF's strategy by enabling data-driven prioritization of investments and advising climate resilience, gender equality, sustainable services. It ensures impactful and equitable outcome in fragile and nexus countries, contexts for children and affected populations. It lays the foundation for advancing and enhancing strategic thought leadership and risk-informed decision-making for the WASH sector. Ultimately, WASH insecurity analysis empowers us to enhance coordination and response, optimize decision-making, maximize resources, impact to achieve collective outcomes. It ensures we can reach those most in need, prioritizing the most vulnerable populations and geographical areas, building a future where no one is left behind. Dear colleagues, friends, partners, I really appreciate that there is a significant number that have joined today's launch. I look forward for us to having a very interactive, exciting, and that we will all follow the exciting next phase of this initiative, which by its important step towards our shared goal of addressing WASH insecurity for the most deliverable, we will be able to showcase that if we have a joined up approach, evidence-based, we can make a concerted actions for those most in need. So once again, I would express my appreciation to DG ECHO, to our partners, to our global WASH. This is a critically important aspect of our work. Let's have a wonderful launch today. I thank you. And James, at this stage, over to you.
Thank you so much, Hazel, for those remarks. Very inspiring. I would like to move the session on today by inviting Marca Ramos, the Global WASH Cluster Coordinator here at UNICEF, to talk a little bit about the Global WASH Cluster's vision for utilizing the WASH Insecurity Analysis. Over to you, Monica.
Great. Thank you, James. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you joining us today. It's a real honor to be here as we mark the significant milestone in the evolution of the WASH Insecurity Analysis. I would also like to take the moment to extend our sincere thanks to the leadership from DG ECHO for their generous support and to the UNICEF leadership for their continued belief and support in advancing this crucial initiative. So I'm very pleased to provide an overview of the WASH Insecurity Analysis, a valuable framework that the Global WASH Cluster, with our partners and in collaboration with UNICEF, supports to enable joint analysis across humanitarian development and peace actors. It is an important first step in achieving collective outcomes. As we all know, humanitarian needs are growing in complexity and scale, and our sector must evolve to ensure that WASH interventions are strategic, data-driven, and responsive to the most pressing needs. Despite the wealth of data that is available, our ability to analyze and translate this into information and actionable prioritized interventions remains a challenge. The WASH Insecurity Analysis identifies where to assess WASH services are insecure and populations that are exposed to the most negative consequences. Increasing rates of water and sanitation related diseases, reduced well-being, and the denial of people's human rights to WASH. It also assesses the chronic and acute shocks and incorporates resilience by defining current and future shocks and identifying underlying vulnerabilities. This creates a better understanding of which dimensions are driving WASH insecurity, which is critical for the prioritization and planning of joint action across immediate, medium, and long-term timelines. The Global WASH Cluster sees great potential in the scope and the impact of the WASH Insecurity Analysis for the humanitarian WASH sector and beyond. By providing a common analytical foundation for essential tasks such as undertaking the scale of a crisis and identifying those in need, we can ensure that our interventions are not only well-targeted, but also aligned with broader resilience-building efforts. As we collaborate and coordinate, we play a central role in achieving collective outcomes. The Global WASH Cluster advocates for joint context and risk analysis as the basis for complementary planning and programming in fragile settings. The WASH Insecurity Analysis serves as a vital driver for the evidence-based advocacy and informed decision-making supporting sustained investment in the WASH sector. So through your engagement and investment in the WASH Insecurity Analysis, we can achieve collective outcomes today. Together, the WASH Insecurity is not just about data, it's about ensuring that every decision that we make leads to tangible improvements in the lives that are most at risk and most vulnerable. Thank you, James. Back over to you.
Thank you so much, Monica. So now that we have discussed the broader objectives and the importance of the WASH Insecurity Analysis, we're going to move into the next part of today's session. So we're going to take a closer look at the methodology behind the WASH Insecurity Analysis, and to take a look at the framework and to understand a little bit more about the work that is planned over the next 2 years. So I would like to invite my colleague, Alberto, who's a data engineer with the Frontier Data Technical Unit and DAPM here at UNICEF, to talk us through the methodology. Over to you, Alberto.
Thank you very much, dear James, Monica, and colleagues for this very inspiring and kind introduction. I'm Alberto. I'm the data engineer for this project, so my role is to ensure that we populate all indicators in this analysis with data points, and that we do that in a harmonized and scalable manner across all the administrative units and across all countries. Also, I'll walk you through an overview of how the WASH Insecurity Analysis is constructed. So to mention, first of all, the first message, the WIA, or WASH Insecurity Analysis, is a composite index. So this number allows us to rank subnational areas within a country, meaning that the higher this number results, the higher the insecurity that WASH is quantified. So when this number is high in areas within a country, it typically means that the following evaluation in 4 selective dimensions occur. That is, that these areas have been impacted by current hazards, that it is likely in these areas future hazards will disrupt services and population, that the underlying vulnerability in these areas is high, and that the basic WASH services is low. Next slide, please, James. Okay, I know this is somehow an overwhelming slide. So I will try to convey or to summarize the message behind it. So this is how we measure WASH insecurity analysis in 4 dimensions, restricted to the limitations that we encounter in the availability and also in the resources to process data. So in terms of data sources for WASH indicators, we resource to the Joint Monitoring Program, this joint initiative between the World Health Organization and UNICEF. So we use their surveys and results. Whereas in other cases where we find that data updates or spatial granularity or representativeness of the data is higher through this multi-sector needs assessment or MSNAs. So we resort to those in such cases. The next dimension, which is related to current hazards, this is the most variable in terms of data sources, I would say, as we first devised or thought this dimension as a new opportunity to engage experts in country offices or in government agencies within countries to resort to experts in the field that provide us on inputs on these current hazards. When this is not possible, we resort to other sources. For example, ACLED events on conflict, which has weekly updates, or other institutes such as the World Resources Institute that provides hydrological maps that gives us insight on, for example, the water scarcity around the world. So this is just to summarize what's the objective and what's the sources here on the current hazards, and where we try to use as much possible frontier data techniques, geospatial data sources, when data availability and our resources to process this come to place, I would say. So with respect to future hazards, that's the most easy, or in terms of data sources, we use a global model from the World Bank that is called the Think Hazard. We use this because it has a good global coverage across subnational areas up to admin 2 across the world. Important, I think, to mention what we try to capture between current and future. These 2 dimensions always are based on past events. Whereas for current hazards, we try to focus when possible to events that have occurred within the latest 12 months. Whereas in the future hazard, as we call it, models such as the Think Hazard, it resorts to past events and it categorizes the return periodicity of this event. So that is to say, if more events have occurred in the past, we expect that it's more likely that they will occur in the future. And last but not least, the vulnerability indicators within this dimension, in which we also resort to new and geospatial data sources, such as the Relative Wealth Index from the Metadata for Good initiative, and the usual and more standard health and demographic surveys such as the MIX and the DHS. So please, James, if you can move forward to the next slide. Okay, what is the added value, or what we think the WIA adds with respect to other analysis? It is as lowest as we can within the country subnational divisions to provide more insights into action in the prioritization of areas within the country, and the use of a standard framework to scale within different countries and contexts. So in here we have a trade-off. So it doesn't mean that within the analysis we can compare countries. We also we do it at the subnational level, but the standard framework allows us to approach different contexts in the same way. And I think this has been a key way to make the analysis more scalable across the world. We put or we try to put common, as we say, indicators that are relevant for both the humanitarian and the development actors and contexts. The way that we aggregate all these indicators into dimensions and into a final score is based on a simple composite index in which we use a so-called counting approach. This counting approach also allows us then to unfold, as we say, the final numbers to explore the drivers within these dimensions. So, so what we try to achieve through this analysis and these numbers is, first of all, what are the priority areas to focus, either from the humanitarian or from the development, such as a disaster resilience projects, or both of them. And also from the planning perspective, if the WASH strategies, investments, and plans do align with the results that we find through this analysis. So please, James, if you can move to next slide. Okay, here we have one of the countries in which we have run the analysis. This is Kenya. What I would like to show here is what or how the final analysis look like. We have a number. This number summarizes all the information and allows us to rank areas within the country. The highest the number this is, it will reflect the highest insecurity in WASH. We can categorize the way we want. I would say this, for example, into colors. This is a post-processing that we do, but the idea of having a ranking gives us flexibility in terms of how we categorize analysis later. In this case, we have shown, for example, the 20 highest insecure counties in Kenya with respect to WASH. So if we would like to prioritize or to have an insight on this, I will ask James to move to the next slide to see some of the insights. So when we have the analysis finalized, what we can do apart from ranking these, here, for example, we have 10 or 11 of the worst counties. The line is showing how the WIA index go from the highest on the left to the lower to the lowest on the right. So we have one scale for that to order these counties, and within them we have these stack bars that shows us in percentage how much of these 4 different modules are driving the final result. So in these cases, as I mentioned, what we would typically find in these worst scenarios is that we have a high level of current and future hazard, a high underlying layers of vulnerability, and low access to basic services. So I mean, the conclusion here is straightforward in terms that humanitarian and development actors need to play action together to address this. However, in another case, for example, in next slide, we can highlight other counties in which still we can prioritize, for example, actions in terms of disaster resilience or more on the development areas. Why would say this? Because when we look at the numbers, what we see is that, for example, the contribution from current hazards to the final index is low or almost none, but we still find contribution from the future hazards, meaning that even if thing has not happened today, may happen tomorrow. So we want to also have this component in mind. Yes, I think I would close with the next slide, please, James, showing which are the countries in which we have conducted this analysis last year. So we are proud on the work that we managed to do. Just to mention here, we have some maps that show the analysis in different countries at different administrative levels. This, again, does not mean that we can compare colors between countries, but yes, we can, within the same countries, proceed with the prioritization and further analysis. I will stop here. Thank you very much for this opportunity to walk you through the methodology, and I will hand it over to you, James.
Thank you so much, Alberto. That was a really clear description of the methodology, and hopefully that sparked some questions for those in the room. Please do use the Q&A or raise your hand at the end where we'll be able to address some of those questions. So I'm just going to wrap up to explain a little bit about the ambitious work plan that we have set up for the next 2 years for this funded ECHO project. So the project runs up until October 2026, which is an amazing opportunity for us to be able to really roll out and institutionalize the WEA as a tool, both in coordination platforms, WASH coordination platforms, and in country offices around the world. So just a quick summary of some of the results and objectives that we have for this initiative. Obviously, number one, the kind of the bread and butter of our work is going to be rolling out and supporting countries, coordination platforms with training, remote and in-person support in order to help them to implement the analysis in their contexts. Maybe one thing to pick up on Alberto's discussion of the methodology is that this is still quite an interactive, engaging process, and it's very much done in partnership with countries. Although many of the data sets that we rely on do have some level of kind of global availability, being able to understand and ground truth that data with local experts, with government partners, with operational NGOs in the field is really vital. So we'll be carrying on providing that support to countries with the target of producing 25 country level reports and obviously supporting ongoing reanalysis as more data becomes available through updated surveys, MSNAs, etc. The second point, advocacy and communications. So obviously, producing these analyses is really based in being able to communicate and produce change and support the continuous sufficient allocation of funding to WASH interventions, and to be able to enable players at the national level to be able to advocate for the support and the prioritization that they need. So that's going to be a really important part of our work. Engagement and feedback with the WASH sector. So I'll be talking a little bit more about this in the next slide, but we'll be establishing and maintaining a mechanism for engaging with experts, both in terms of data science, but also in terms of local country-led expertise on the ground, and a reference group for users. And these are really the mechanism that we're going to use to ensure that the WASH Insecurity Analysis really adapts to best practice, adapts to the changing data landscape. There's obviously a lot of advancement in terms of the way that data is being collected and used. We want to make sure that we're staying up to date with that, and that we're responding in the best way and producing the most useful and appropriate outputs. So those engagement opportunities are there, and yeah, we welcome your input to those. And finally, we've described the what we call the base framework. So this is an analytical product that Alberto went into details with. We're also looking at opportunities to perform to develop modules that would allow us to customize and produce standard but very specific analyses for specific contexts. So, for example, looking at WASH insecurity, particularly in displacement settings, displacement camps, looking at situation in urban areas, which may be more challenging to have the granularity of data required. And obviously also to look at aspects of WASH programming such as gender and accessibility, and other things that are of interest to our partners. We're also looking at rolling out specific tailored analyses. So these would be more rapid, aiming for more real-time analysis based on specific country requirements. So opportunities for engagement, starting now. So obviously for WASH clusters, for WASH coordination platforms and country offices, we are at the point where we're starting to recruit and conduct the analyses. We do have a focus at the moment on fragile and conflict-affected contexts with an activated coordination mechanism in place, but we are interested in being able to roll this out much more widely in the future. We welcome engagement through our reference groups. So we're going to be recruiting experts to support continuous improvement, both to the methods and to the way that the WASH Insecurity Analysis is used in country and applied. And we'll be recruiting obviously users past and present to provide feedback on the outputs in the process. And we're always interested in looking for opportunities to align with and learn from similar initiatives and to amplify calls for improved use of data. I can say that since 2019, one of the really key strengths of this initiative has been that it's able to cross silos, to cross boundaries. And so we're looking for those opportunities to align with and learn from other uses of data. So yeah, please get in touch with me personally, directly, or through the Global WASH Cluster, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much. So we do have some time. I can see that the Q&A has started lighting up, which is fantastic. And I'm looking forward to those discussions. I'm going to invite Barbara to show yourself, to come on screen, and you'll be moderating the Q&A session.
Thank you, James, and good morning or good afternoon to everybody. You have already put a number of questions in the chat. Maybe just to introduce myself, I work for DG ECHO in Joanna Dermanin's unit as team leader for a number of policies, and for now I am covering for the WASH policy position. Maybe to kickstart the Q&A session, you have put 3 questions that are maybe good to warm up. So I will ask the 3 questions and then turn to colleagues for providing answers. So maybe the 3 questions we could group is, one is how frequent will the updates be made to this index? The second one is the index going to replace the WASH severity classification tool? And the third one is the plan for the WASH Insecurity Analysis to replace or to harmonize with the HWISE tool and to become a unique standard in terms of WASH responses. Who can I turn to for responding to these 3 questions? James?
Thank you, Barbara. Yeah, I'll jump in on those. Maybe start with your second question. So yes, absolutely, this is a continuation of the work that was known as the WASH Security Classification, the WSC, from 2019, and we're very grateful for all the work that's come before this initiative through Reach, Impact Reach, and other partners. So yes, a continuation of the WSC with a renaming. In terms of the frequency, I think in terms of updating the framework itself, the base score is something that we've settled on over there's been a lot of work done with Tufts University and others to develop the framework and the list of indicators. So that is relatively static. There will be opportunities to update that based on needs as we go forward. What will likely change is the data sets that we use, and how that data is ingested and brought in to conduct these analyses. Obviously, when we're talking about a humanitarian setting, we are likely to be basing a lot of the indicators, specifically on the WASH indicators, on MSNAs, which typically happen annually. So that kind of cadence of reanalysis would be probably appropriate, but it would depend very much on the context in each individual country. And maybe to highlight the question about HWISE, the Household Water Insecurity Experiences Scale. So HWISE is a method of data collection. It's a really interesting way to collect experiential data on WASH insecurity using a very small set of questions. And so, yeah, that's absolutely something that we're going to be looking at as a potential data source, but it kind of fulfills a different purpose to the WASH insecurity analysis. Hopefully that answered your question. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Maybe I turn to Alberto for the next 3 questions. Hopefully you're the right person. The first one is, displacement does not appear in future hazards. Why is that? And I want to add that I didn't see, that's a personal question, anything about presence of displacement camps or refugee camps in the index. Can you elaborate on this? And the index does not seem to include conflicts. So can you also elaborate on that? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Barbara. So in terms of, I don't know where to start, but in terms of conflict, so we do have two indicators. So one that highlights on the previous 12 months. So this will be provided on a yes or no question from experts in the country. If they are available to provide this answer, or if not, we resort to online data sources such as ACLED events, where we have selected certain category of events, and we can kind of count the amount of events that have happened across the countries within the last 12 months to produce, let's say, these indicators in terms of conflict events. We resort also to methodology on ACLED that is kind of gives the probability of conflicts to occur in the future. So that will be the difference between these two indicators on conflict from the last 12 and the future. So we do incorporate this. Maybe the question is that conflict is not itself a dimension. So it's an indicator within hazards. So the contribution to the final index will be derived by this equally weighted contribution by dimension and by indicator within dimension. So this is the way we have devised. Of course, people may argue that conflict is very relevant, but as part as we move forward, we don't have any strong assumption where not to start with equally weighted indicators and equally weighted dimensions. So that is in terms of conflict. In terms of displacements, in future, well, I haven't seen these type of models. If we could predict where people would be in the future, that would be wow, amazing. I think it's very challenging. So that's why we have resorted to this kind of last 12 months indicator. In that sense, we either resort again to experts within country offices or governmental agencies in countries that can provide this either on a yes or no answer, or in other cases, we have more information about internally displaced peoples and or refugees, kind of number of people that have been displaced to a zone in a country. So this is better information because it allows us to run with more information rather than a qualitative yes or no. So these are the kind of the flexibility we have found to address this indicator. And yeah, and it depends also on the country. We have found certain countries where this is a very political thing, so we can just resort to what the government provides as information. And the last, I think, so I don't remember now if there was a third question. If you can remind Barbara about that. We talked about displacements, conflict, and
that was it. There was two in one actually, but you have responded.
Okay.
Thank you, Alberto. Very clear. Maybe following questions would be there are a number of people in the chat who are asking how they can access the first results, and whether it's possible to differentiate the analysis between development and emergency interventions. Who can take this one?
Thanks. I'll jump in on that one. So yes, we are going to be setting up a mechanism probably through the Global WASH Cluster website, where we'll be sharing both resources on the methodology, but also obviously reports and maps and outputs that are produced by the analyses that we conduct. So that will be available, and thank you, Alyosha, for putting that in the chat. But also we'll be sharing that in the link after this session. And in terms of breaking down, I think between development and humanitarian, it's not something that we're looking at. It's, you know, the main purpose, or one of the main purposes of this initiative, is to really break down that the silos between development and humanitarian work. The indicators that we're working on, that we're collecting, are applicable in both contexts. They're not chosen to speak to one method of response, or one typology of programming above the other. We are looking at ways that we can produce or unpack the score into different kind of scores or applications. So being able to split, you know, WASH indicators out of the overall score, to be able to show the contribution of water, sanitation, hygiene, or shocks. And to be able to produce kind of custom analyses based on kind of unpacking various elements from the framework. But it's not something that we're looking at to specifically produce an analysis for humanitarian response or for development programming.
Thank you, James. And maybe we take a final questions before the closing remarks. There was a question about how this feeds into or how this fuels the humanitarian needs overview. And correlated questions is how is the timing of this linked to the humanitarian cycles and the timing that partners need to respect to respond to donors' requests? Over to you, James.
Thank you. Yeah, so absolutely. Yeah, we're very, very aware of the timeliness of the humanitarian program cycle, and being able to link up specifically with specifically in humanitarian context, where we have a cycle of multi-sector needs assessment, being able to link up and ensure that the timing of the analyses that we're conducting is synced to the availability of the most recent data. So that's definitely something that we're looking at, and that obviously, from a very practical sense, means that we're looking at recruiting, onboarding, training countries, certainly in the early part of the year, so that once that the additional data from MSNAs comes through, that we're ready to integrate that into the framework, so that we're making sure that we're providing the most up-to-date analysis possible with the data that's available. And yes, in terms of the HNO, we are exploring mechanisms for using or adapting the base score of the WASH Insecurity Analysis to be the foundation for the way that we're calculating people in need, the way that we're prioritizing collective action in countries through coordination mechanisms. So that's definitely something that's on our radar. It's not a simple thing to address, but it's definitely something that we're working on, and that's definitely, I think, a really good showcase of the potential value in this kind of analysis.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
There are still some questions in the chat. I've tried to group them to answer to the ones that were coming back several times, or that were quite similar. I think the plan will be to try to answer to all questions in writing so that everybody gets the information he or she was looking for. I'll turn over to James for the closing remarks, but maybe James, in your closing remark, if you don't mind, you can address also the point on data scarcity. Over.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for your moderation, Barbara. Yes, I didn't see the actual question on data scarcity. I think, you know, from looking back over the way the data landscape has changed in the last 5 years, the availability and the quality of data that we can apply to these analyses has changed considerably. That said, you know, we are still constrained by data availability, and you know, part of the work in advocacy that we have in front of us is to advocate for more standardized, more aligned, higher quality data collection that really speaks to the research questions, to the operational questions that we have in countries. So it's the way that we've developed the framework has been in the context of data scarcity. We're never going to have all of the data that we would want, particularly in fast-moving humanitarian crises. So that's definitely something that we're working in the context of. But it's something that we're hoping that by providing the standard framework and by advocating for more standard approaches to data analysis, it's something that we can support the improvement of over the next 2 years. So with that, we've come to the end of the hour. I want to thank you all for joining us for this really important milestone, and thank you so much for the interesting questions. It's definitely something that we're going to review after the session. We will definitely build those questions into the information that we share at the end of this session to everyone who's registered. So big thank you for that. And as we move forward with the global rollout of the analysis, your engagement is going to be key. We encourage you to explore how these tools can support your work and contribute to the way that the tool develops over the next couple of years, and to make sure that the work that we're doing really speaks to the context in which you're operating as we move forward. We're going to follow up with all attendees to share the key resources from today's session and to gather your feedback. Again, that's really useful in helping us to improve future events like this. So please do reach out to me directly or through the WASH cluster if you're interested in engaging further, or if you have any further specific questions. Lastly, a big thank you to our speakers and our partners at DG ECHO, UNICEF and the Global WASH Cluster for their leadership and their commitment to advancing our work. Thank you again for your time, and we're looking forward to seeing you in future discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, James.
Bye-bye.